Hi, I'm Sanjeev Surati. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Whetstone Technologies. We're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Boston, Massachusetts, and Seattle, Washington, which is where I'm talking to you from today. I've been in the software industry for over 30 years and worked on products for companies like Microsoft, Corel, and McAfee. Since watching Star Trek as a kid, I've always been intrigued by the possibilities of conversational AI, although back then we just called it talking to computers. In creating voice applications for real over the past 3 years, one thing I can tell you is that it's a lot more than just talking to computers. Today, I'm going to share with you some of what we've learned from working with pharma companies to create a production voice application that's beneficial to consumers while passing required scrutiny from IT governments, legal and regulatory compliance, and marketing policies. Perhaps you've used a voice interface, either on your mobile phone, in your home, or maybe talk to your car. You've maybe done things like asking for a store's opening hours, turning the lights on and off in your home, or one of my favorites, turning on an Xbox. Or maybe you're just learning about the traffic while en route to a destination. Brands are just beginning to utilize conversational AI to engage with their customers. Here in the US, pharmaceutical companies are permitted to advertise directly to consumers. Having a voice application enables them to not only complement existing marketing channels, but to literally continue the conversation with consumers. However, in pharma, there is a tougher set of challenges due to the industry regulation and data privacy laws. So let's review a use case that takes less than 2 minutes from the time the consumer asks about a prescription drug until the time that an offer is literally sitting in their hands. Say you see a TV commercial, read an online article, or see an advertisement in your social media feed prompting you to ask a virtual assistant about a brand to get a copay savings offer to help cut down on your out-of-pocket expenses. You then go ahead and launch the voice application on Alexa or Google Assistant, and then you're asked, are you over 18? Or are you on commercial health insurance? You say yes to both, and then it tells you that you can get a savings offer sent to your mobile phone if you'll give a phone number. So you say your phone number. Tell the assistant it's okay to go ahead and send a text message, and a few seconds later, poof, the voice application sends you a text message with a savings offer that you can now show your pharmacist. This is all achieved by talking. You could have done this while driving your car to pick up your kid from a soccer game, or while doing the dishes, or while out taking your dog for a walk. It sounds so simple. Having been a martial artist for most of my life, I've been a huge believer in a quote from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get hit. Let me assure you from personal experience that the moment you get punched in the face or take a solid body shot, that's when you find out how prepared you really are. That sample voice user experience or voice UX I just described, that makes conversational AI look so easy. How hard could it be? Once somebody, is willing to take that on, design a conversation, get all the approvals you need, develop it for both Alexa and Google Assistant, and then deliver the finished product. Well, let's talk about what it takes to make that all happen. To maximize a consumer audience, most voice applications leverage Alexa for the home and Google for communicating via mobile phones. However, both of these platforms are privately funded and maintained. Effectively, these are walled gardens, if you will. On Alexa, an application is a skill. On Google, it's an action. So that said, no surprise that delivering on both platforms at the same time comes with challenges. Both of these are proprietary. They communicate with your application endpoints using completely different request and response formats. And they have entirely different sets of expectations as to responsiveness and monitoring of the applications in production. Now, couple this with the fact that you now need to think about how to best maintain that solution for what are effectively two entirely separate voice applications. In fact, this starts out right from creating the placeholders in the application stores for the initial skill and action. White labeling voice applications to have a company's branding and company name requires an entirely different setup for Google and Amazon. On Amazon, you're going to be setting things up for the Alexa Skills Store. For Google, you're going to be setting things up for the Google Actions directory. Amazon developer accounts are secured at the account level, meaning if I give somebody developer access, marketing access, admin access, etc. to the account, that's the level of access they're going to have to all the Alexa skills under that account. With Google, Google Actions are secured on a per project basis. So although everything's still created under the same account, what happens is you can actually give a lot more fine-grained control as to exactly what somebody can do with each different action. In each case, though, you're going to end up working with the IT department to get through the accounts and projects set up. Now, one of the things we discovered is with a pharma company, the appearance of the Alexa skill and Google Action in their respective application stores, again, the Alexa Skills Store, the Google Actions directory, all of this needs to be reviewed and vetted to make sure these meet all the necessary standards. So in our case, while we were working through account setup, we were asked to create mock-ups of the branded and white labeled Alexa skill and Google Action, which, since we didn't actually have accounts set up, required some creative work with Photoshop. Not necessarily what we were thinking when we're thinking of writing a software application. So now let's get on to designing the application. Even before you go into the details of conversational design, you need to name the application so that people will know how to access it on Alexa or Google Assistant. That application name is called the invocation name. And with most brands, they'll want it to be the brand name, hence commands such as open brand X or talk to brand X. Now bear in mind, your typical pharma drug name tends to be a one-word name. But there's a catch on both Amazon and Google, as they want you to use 2 or 3 word invocation names and initially disallow one-word invocation names, except in the case of a brand name, in which case you must prove ownership. Okay, that was a mouthful. The requirements of both platforms are entirely different. And to getting some of the necessary information can take longer than you may think. On Amazon, what you must do is provide documentation showing that you are the brand owner or have authorization from the brand owner to be working on that skill on their behalf. The documentation, as we found, a trademark registration certificate will suffice. On Google, however, you need to link the action to the brand's website via the Google Search Console. If the website isn't in the Google Search Console, then it needs to be set up. And getting things set up there, if you need to do that, requires working with the IT department. But even once you've done that, you still need to, there's emails that need to be sent and whatnot. But the bottom line is, you're going to be working with the IT department to get the the Google action associated with the website. Once you've established that link, now you can apply for what's called a whitelist exception, and that allows you to have a one-word invocation name. One of the challenges of voice UX design for a pharma brand is that there are specific legal and regulatory requirements that must be included, not just in the application, but as I was saying, the descriptions on web pages. For example, after the brand name of a drug is given for the first time, it must also be called by its generic name, which really is multiple syllables that sound very, very scientific. To put all of this in perspective, getting through multiple rounds of interdepartmental approval for even a simple less than 2-minute interaction took us several months. Now, pharma drug brand and generic names in and of themselves present specific sorts of challenges for voice assistants in terms of recognition and pronunciation. Branded names in the pharmaceutical industry are made-up words. Those words are not going to be part of an initial lexicon necessarily that a virtual assistant may be trained on. So this means that they're not necessarily recognizable by a computer or virtual assistant. In fact, they may not even be pronounced correctly by people. So you're going to have to go through some steps to get the automated speech recognition, or the ASR, and also to work with the pronunciation to make sure that everything's working smoothly. So let's start with recognition. When you create a voice application, you create a language model that consists of intents and utterances, which is effectively meaning different ways to say things and the meanings associated with them. As part of putting that together, you also can create enumerated data types, often called slots on Alexa or entities in Google Assistant. But what those are effectively different groupings of names. So examples of slots would be something like names of movies, names of TV shows, sports teams. And when you provide different values that are parts of those groupings, you can also provide synonyms, which are different ways to pronounce that, different ways to say that name, which may be different words in a language that, when put together, actually should resolve to that name. Okay? So that's how you can get through the recognition. But the pronunciation is going to require an entirely different set of techniques. What we'll use for this is something called speech synthesis markup language, or SSML. SSML can be used, there are a set of instructions that can be used to do things like request that an MP3 file be played. You can also change the pitch and tone of the virtual assistant's voice. You can also even change, use alternative voices. It also has fields that allow you to specify the different ways to pronounce something. Part of the challenge of working in the trenches is that both Amazon and Google have different ways of handling this. So if I'm thinking on Alexa, what I want to use is something called a phoneme instruction. And in the case of a phoneme, what you do is you specify an alphabet to use, which consists of a series of symbols beyond just your standard, for example, with English, A, B, C, D. But this consists of a series of symbols that have very specific pronunciations assigned to them. And that acts as a hint as to how to pronounce the name. If you're working on Google Assistant, that doesn't support phoneme instructions. What you use there is a substitution instruction or a sub. And in there, you can specify an alias that now has your alternative pronunciation. And effectively, that's your hint. So now if we want to bring this back around to pharma, imagine trying to get a voice assistant to correctly pronounce acetylsalicylic acid. As a hint, that's the generic name for aspirin. Now about that phone number. The reason we collected the phone number in that example voice application I gave was so we could turn around and switch modes from voice to text messaging to go ahead and deliver something to the consumer. However, that phone number creates more issues. So as soon as you collect that phone number, you're now taking on, exposing yourself to different types of laws and regulations around telecommunications and privacy. That phone number is personally identifiable information or PII data, okay? The brand owner, they have their own data compliance policies, and this can come from both a legal and an IT perspective. What this really means is that when you start collecting that sort of data, your application architecture and processes are going to go through multiple rounds of scrutiny. Honestly, I could spend hours discussing data handling, security, and privacy. For those of you who are interested in getting some more detail on this, my co-founder, John Ewaz, is doing a session called Hosting an Enterprise-Ready Voice Solution that goes into more of the detail of the things that need to be considered from a data and overall security perspective if you're going to go here. Okay, so we have all the pieces of the application. The appearance in the Google Actions directory, the appearance in the Alexa Skills Store, the workflows, the responses, what's displayed on the screen, on screen devices, how is the data stored and secured. All of this is put under a very powerful microscope. Everything gets reviewed by everybody. I can't say that enough. And this is going to take longer than you think. Now, all of this scrutiny, it's for a good reason, it's all for the stake of, everybody has a stake in the success of a voice user experience, a voice application in a regulated industry. And we're all working towards a common goal, which is to do what's right for the consumer. In this case, the goal with this application is to make it as easy as possible for people to get some help, assistance with payment for the prescription drugs without needing to have to go through a browser, fill out forms, and then wait for coupons to arrive. Now, one thing I do want to make sure we cover is that a good voice application is not particularly useful if people aren't aware of it or can't find it. From an advertising's perspective, my favorite analogy is to think websites in the 90s, back before search engines became the norm, the dark ages, if you will. Back then, it wasn't uncommon to see buses driving by with website addresses plastered on their sides. When you do a voice application, an advertising campaign to build awareness must be factored in. There is some level of discoverability on these platforms, but they're still in early stages. On Alexa, there's a specific can fulfill intent request that you can say your skill supports. That can cause Alexa to call your skill to ask if it can fulfill a query. This is still in beta and has been for the past couple of years. On Google Assistant, there is the notion of an implicit invocation. And these are phrases you can register with your action that act as hints for the platform to potentially drive those requests to your action. Accounting for all of this is a key success factor as people are currently using Amazon's Alexa and Google Assistant for limited tasks. This should change over the next few years, but it does mean working closely with marketing to ensure the voice application fits into both their strategic and tactical plans across all channels. Again, getting approval for advertising for pharmaceutical products will take longer than you may expect. Okay, after getting all the approvals and sign-offs ready, we're finally able to create the applications, and then we open them up for client final testing via alpha and beta releases. And then we start looking for a soft launch, and then we can get to a public launch. Honestly, even though it's a short voice application, I hope I made it clear that there is a lot of time and negotiation involved. But that's what happens when you're trailblazing. This is all new. The key to success is getting the most difficult parts done first and recognize that the approval processes are going to take longer than you think. Remember, in the words of Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get hit. I hope you learned some of the challenges that we faced in working with a regulated industry when using conversational AI to engage with consumers. Sometimes no amount of planning covers all the challenges, but trailblazing in emerging technology is rarely easy. Let's keep the conversation going. Please feel free to get in touch with me. Please share any associated links with those who may have missed today's session. For a discussion on enterprise-grade voice application, please attend Hosting an Enterprise-Ready Voice Solution at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time by my co-founder, John Ewaz. He's also the CTO of Whetstone Technologies. Thank you for attending Voice Global, and thank you for attending my session.